In this module, we're going to give you everything you need to know in order to know how to deal with and get around objections that you will receive from prospects while performing sales prospecting. Let's start out by talking about what exactly an objection is. An objection is basically one of your prospect's best weapons. This is where they will basically say something that kind of acts as a stop sign. And they'll use this to try to end the conversations, try to slow them down, or try to take the conversation into a direction of their choosing. And if they think you're a salesperson and they just want to get rid of you, the direction of their choosing will be to completely shut you down and end the conversation. Some common objections that you're sure to face if you haven't already, and a lot of these might look familiar if you've done any prospecting. I'm busy right now. Who are you with? What is this in regards to? I'm not interested. Just send me some information. We already used somebody today. We're not looking at making any changes right now. We don't have any money to spend. Those should sound familiar. We will talk about the majority of those in this training module and tell you how to respond to them. But the key thing is that why is this such an important area for you to focus on? By the way, if you can improve your knowledge and execution in this one area, you will see immediate improvements in your results. And the reason why is because you are sure to face an objection on just about every cold call that you make. You may get them early, right at the beginning, or you may establish your call, but then you might get some subtle objections towards the end. But even as disheartening as that is to hear, the good news is that there are only really about 10 objections that you will consistently face, and that's a fairly small number. In fact, a lot of the ones that you faced, we just went through a list just on the previous slide, and we're going to teach you how to respond to those. So by simply preparing for that short list of objections and knowing what to respond when each one comes up, you'll immediately improve your performance. And this will have a big impact on your mental fortitude. For example, if you aren't prepared and don't know how to respond to these objections, you're going to get beat up. You're going to make some calls and you're going to get shot down, and calls are going to be ended on the prospect's terms. You're going to get discouraged. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to lose confidence. You're not going to have fun. You're not going to have good results. And can you see the mental direction that that's going? Well, let's flip that. Let's say that you are prepared, and when you face these objections, you diffuse them. You get around them. You start generating leads. You start building confidence. You start generating results. That's a completely different place. It's sort of, if you can think of a sporting analogy, think of a quarterback for a football team who faces different defenses from the opposition. A quarterback that's not prepared could end up not reading the defense and not executing as well, and ends up getting sacked, and the team gives over the ball, ends up losing, and that's just not a lot of fun. Now picture a quarterback that knows the defensive scheme of the opposition inside and out, and knows how to read it, and knows exactly where to put the ball or what to do when different situations occur. That individual is going to perform at a high level, is going to be able to have confidence, is going to enjoy what they're doing. And that's what by simply using some of the logic that we're going to give you here today, and by preparing a little bit, that's the direction you can head in. So preparing is one thing for objections, but how are we gonna handle them? I mean, I guess before we even think about being prepared, we need to think about what to do. And there are really three options that we lay out for you in terms of how to respond. Meaning, what are we gonna respond with when the prospect gives us some sort of objection? So the option one is comply, which this is basically to give in to the objection. The second one is to overcome. This is basically to try to reverse whatever the prospect is saying, change their mind, overcome the objection, blast through it, turn it around. And redirect is sort of to segue, deflect the objection into a new but related area. Let's go through each of those one at a time. So as I mentioned, comply is basically to give in. So an example of that would be prospect says, I'm not interested. Okay, have a nice day. Of course, this is probably the weakest of the three responses, and only to be used as a last resort. But the reality is that we will use it. We will use the option of complying. But like I said, use it as a last resort, because if you always comply with every objection you face, you're not gonna get anywhere. You know, if you got to try something else first, and but at some point you do have to comply. So because let's look at one extreme. Let's say that you never comply. That's not going to get you anywhere, because you're just going to make people mad. You know, if a prospect's giving you an objection and you just hold your ground, you're going to end up it's going to get to a point where someone's going to be very irritated by you, and that's not good for rapport. That's not going to lead to sales results. So at some point you do have to comply. And one rule of thumb is, let's try something else 2 to 3 times and then comply. So we get the objection. Let's give it let's go another direction, and then if we can't get anywhere, okay, sure, have a nice day. So let's talk about some other things that we could do. We talked about overcoming, and as I mentioned, this is to diffuse the objection. So an example of this would be, and when I say diffuse, this is basically to get rid of the objection, which would mean you're basically changing the prospect's mind. So an example of this would be, I'm not interested. Okay, well, but we also have the auto-tuning feature, and we're the global leader doing this for 30 years. So in that example, the prospect said, I'm not interested, so I'm going to try to give them more information to change them from not interested to interested. So that's why there I'm saying the auto-tune, I'm giving them information about the feature, and I'm talking about us being the global leader in our 30 years. So that's an example of trying to overcome. Now, we don't recommend trying to overcome objections, and this is actually what your natural instinct will tell you to do if you're not jumping to comply. Basically, when someone says I'm not interested, your natural instinct is, well, I'm going to try to talk them into being interested, because I'm a salesperson. It's my job to sell, and I can't let them get away by just saying I'm not interested. But you need to fight that, because that's not really a good direction to go, especially when you're prospecting. Because as we've talked about in other modules, our goal is really to get a meeting and to get a lead going. At some point, we may want to face the objection head on and try to resolve it, but not at an early sales prospecting cycle stage. And there's a couple reasons why. For one, it's very challenging to change someone's mind. That's really what you're doing. When they say, I'm not interested, or I don't have money, or we don't need that, when you try to, if you're basically trying to make them interested, or trying to make them think they need it, or trying to make them find money, you're trying to change their mind. And that's something that's fairly challenging to do. It is doable. Like if you get to the point in your sales process where you're in a meeting and you're sitting at the table, and you maybe have 30 minutes to an hour of the prospect's time, and they give you an objection, and you have their full attention, where you can identify why they're giving you the objection, and you can build a case for why they might want to see it some other way, then you might want to do it at that time. But that's the only sort of type of setting that you'd want to do it. You definitely don't want to do it during a phone a prospecting call, or at a networking event, or where you're basically in that first initial contact stage. So the other reason why we don't recommend this, another bullet point here is, it's time consuming to change someone's mind. So that's why you wouldn't want to do it at early sales cycle stage, where you only have like 2 to 5 minutes. But another reason why you wouldn't want to do it is that when you sit there and talk about the objection, you give it a little life. If we sit there and continue to talk about why the prospect's not interested, we're reaffirming in their head that they're not interested. So that's another reason why we want to avoid that. Now, some ways to overcome uh, when you do choose to try to deal with the objection. We'll give you two tactics. One is isolate, then get to the root, and the other one is feel, felt, found. So let's talk about those tactics. So if you do choose to go the route of overcoming, isolate, then get to the root. So here's an objection. The prospect says your prices are too high, right? So here's a way to deal with that head on if we do choose to do that. So and the response is, okay, well, just to confirm, are you saying that everything else is fine with our product and that the price is the only thing that concerns you? So what we did there is we isolated, right? Because we basically want to get them to agree that everything else is fine and it's just this. So we're kind of basically getting focused on that one area. And then we want to get to the root of why they feel that way or why that's a concern. So they say, yeah, it's just the price, everything else is okay. Okay, well, what is it that drives your concern about the price? Is it a budget that you're trying to stay within, or is it more of a cash outlay factor? So what we're doing there is we're getting to the root of what their concern is. Because there's a difference in someone saying your prices are too high. There could be multiple reasons why they're saying that. One is they might have a budget that they're trying to stay within, and if that's a different thing that's driving their concern than your prices being too high. Meaning, if they need to stay within a budget, you might be able to spread the pricing out over a longer period of time. So without basically giving them a lower price. So you want to get to the root of what they're after or what their concern is. And that's when you can start to build your case or find a solution for that objection and try to overcome it. The other tactic to use to overcome is a tactic called feel, felt, found. This isn't something that we came up with. This is a very well-known sales tactic. It works. I personally think it's a little car sales-ish, a little manipulative, but we'll give it to you, and it's something that is well-known in the sales industry. But so the prospect says your prices are too high. So you first start out with a feel statement. I understand why you feel that our prices are high. By the way, I understand. Letting someone know that you understand is a great tactic to use in a lot of different scenarios. So that's great. I understand why you feel that our prices are high. A lot of IT managers that have bought with us that I have brought over felt that same way. So you're talking about felt. Some others felt the same way that you do. So we're basically connecting that person with other people. So they're not alone, and everything they're saying is completely normal. And then we get to the last stage, which is found. But once they switched over, they found that when you add in the reliability of the service, the total cost of ownership actually led to a lower total cost. So there's the found. What they found was something different than what the objection is. So you're sort of leading the prospect to this path, which helps you to build a case why their objection isn't correct or why you don't agree with it. So again, those are overcome objections, and those can deal with you could, and especially if you do those in a cold call, you might trigger someone where they plant their feet in the ground and they continue to disagree with you, and that's not going to lead anywhere, and you really don't have the time to really continue to fight that. The way that we recommend you go is a path called is an option that we refer to as redirecting, and think of this as like a segue or a deflection. So an example is a prospect says, "I'm not interested." Oh, okay, I understand. Do you mind if I ask you what you're doing today in this area? So, and then the prospect might say, "Oh, well, we're using the X1 system." Oh, okay. Well, what year did you implement that? Oh, we implemented that 4 years ago. Oh, okay. And do you use the on-premise system or do you use the cloud system? We use the on-premise. Oh, okay. So, and I just continued through down a line of questioning. And if you'll notice, the most likely the prospect will answer those other questions. And when they do, you've basically gotten away from their objection. You're no longer talking about them not being interested. You're talking about what they're using today. And that's related to where the conversation started. We're just sort of redirecting into away from the objection. And now, if you try this and you're using basically, you're being polite and professional in the rest of your conversation, more often than not, and most of the time, they're going to answer your questions. Like I said, they're not going to sit there and go, when you say, I understand, do you mind if I ask what you're doing today in this area? I said I'm not interested. You know, they're not, most often, they will rarely do that. And so this is a very effective method. And if you think back to your goal is not to sell something. Your immediate goal is your ultimate goal is to sell the prospect. Your immediate goal is to get to a meeting, establish a conversation, schedule an appointment. And so you don't really, the fact that they're not interested actually is not even a valid objection. I'm not interested is a valid reason for them not to buy my product. It's not a valid reason for us not to have a conversation. You know, so your goal is to redirect to keep the conversation going and get away from the objection, and that's what this objection handling tactic does. Now you might say, well, that's pretty cool. I like that, but where do I redirect to? What do I ask? And the great thing here is that we also, you may have watched another training module that we provide around qualifying and pre-qualifying and developing pre-qualifying questions. Those are going to be, your pre-qualifying questions are going to be great areas for you to redirect to. So if your standard pre-qualifying questions are, you know, what are you using today? Do you have a vendor for this? How long have you been doing that? What does this look like? Have you had this type of challenge? Those are great redirects. So they say, we don't have any money to spend. Oh, I understand. Do you mind if I ask, are you using in-house resources or are you currently using an outsourced vendor for that? Oh, we're using such and such. And so the great thing about that approach is that you actually flip things 180 degrees on where the prospect was taking it. Because when they say, I'm not interested, they're bringing the call to an end. And if you don't resolve that there, the call is going to end. And by redirecting and asking some pre-qualifying questions and they answer them, you go from a scenario where the call is about to end to one where the prospect is answering your questions and likely giving you valuable information. Talk about a change in direction there, and it's so easy to do. Now, the other thing I want to show you is that let's say you get away from the objection, they answer 3 questions, but then they go back to the objection, right? You could maybe try to redirect again, but let's say we just can't get them away from the fact that they're not interested. But we ended up having a little brief conversation there, and they answered a bunch of our questions, and then the call ends. Well, the great thing here is that we just extracted some very valuable information, and what we could actually do is call someone else at that company. Let's say we talk to someone in finance, or we could either call someone in a different department, we could call someone at a different level, and we can actually use that information that we gathered, even knowing that Tom said he wasn't interested. We could call Mary and say, hey Mary, you know, I was talking to Tom, and they mentioned that you're using the on-site system and that you implemented it 4 years ago and that you're having troubles with this. I was wondering if I could ask you a couple questions in regards to that, you know, and then so what you've done there is you've used that information to totally warm up your next call, and then you make that next call that much more productive, and you end up, because you share that information with Mary, she doesn't respond to you with the objection out of the gate, and you end up having a great conversation. It leads to you scheduling an appointment, and you know, we never talked to Tom again. Little does Tom know that, you know, Mary, you know, would take the call and be more friendly after you demonstrating that you had some information. So we can redirect to qualifying questions. You could also redirect to your value statement. When a gatekeeper says to you, what is this in regards to? They're basically asking you, that question, and they'll use that a lot. They're wanting you to, because the thing is when you respond directly to the question of what is this in regards to, you might give them an answer like, I'm calling to schedule a meeting. I'm calling to learn a little bit about what your needs are. I was calling to introduce our company. I was calling to introduce myself. Those are really the correct answers that you're doing. And if you say anything like that, the gatekeeper will then know you're a salesperson, and it's okay to get rid of you, and they'll get rid of you. But what's really neat here is you can reply with your value statement, and they don't know how to respond. So if they say, well, what's this in regards to? Oh, well, the reason why I'm calling is I help VPs of sales to improve their performance of their frontline salespeople. And just sit there. And the gatekeeper won't necessarily say, we were waiting for someone to call for that, let me put you through. They won't necessarily do that. But they're gonna it's like you threw them a curveball. They won't hear you say what they've been trained to listen for, and they're gonna think, and it's almost so they won't get rid of you and right away. And then it's almost something difficult for them to respond to, because a lot of times gatekeepers will speak for the prospect and say, oh, we're not interested in that. And when you say your value statement, it's really hard for the prospect, the gatekeeper, to say that the prospect won't be interested. Could you imagine a gatekeeper saying, "Oh, well, our VP of sales isn't interested in improving the performance of frontline people"? How it doesn't even make sense to say that, right? So it's a great thing to redirect to your value statement at certain points. You can redirect to your pain points. So if you decrease sales staff turnover, you shorten. You eliminate the difficulty in getting new salespeople up and running. You could let's say those are 2 pain points that we fix. So someone says, I'm not interested. Oh, okay, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, a lot of VPs of sales that I work with, they can't find a way to decrease sales staff turnover, and they also struggle with it taking a long time to get new hires up and performing. Is that something you've ever had concerns about or in your organization? So what I did there is I'm not interested, and I replied with some pain points. So those are some directions that you can redirect to. Let's go through a few examples of that just to rehash or reinforce what we just went through. So a prospect says, I'm busy right now. A response that you can reply to that would be, okay, well, I can be very brief, or I can call you back at another time. You're kind of giving them a couple options there. Who are you with? So a lot of times, gatekeepers and prospects might say this, and they say it not necessarily out of curiosity. They say it to see if you say something that makes you sound like a vendor trying to sell something. So again, and this is a great place to reply with your value statement. Oh, I'm with Architect, and we work with chemical companies and help them to improve inventory turnover by 20 to 25%. And so here's what's this in regards to? Oh, well, the reason why I'm calling is that we work with chemical companies and help them to improve their turnover by 20 to 25%. I'm not interested. So let's see, this one has redirecting with one of the qualifying questions. So someone says, I'm not interested. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, are you currently using any automation tools to manage your inventory levels? So that's a great way to redirect. And now I want to show you a longer version of that. That's optional, but something you can definitely do. So they say, I'm not interested. Oh, I understand. And I want you to know that we're actually not trying to sell you anything at this point. And then I don't have it here, but I even actually sometimes add this. And so I might say, and I want you to know we're not trying to sell you anything at this point. And honestly, I don't even really know if you fit well with what we provide. But I was just wondering real quick, are you currently using anything, any automation tools to manage your inventory levels? So let's see. Just send me some information. Now this is one that we definitely need to talk about for a couple minutes because this is extremely common. Okay, prospects love this objection because they can get rid of you. The sad thing is that when they ask you to send them information, a lot of times they're trying to get rid of you, especially if this happens early in a call. So if you've barely had any conversation and they say, "Oh, just send me your information," this is a blow off, right? And you know, if you don't know what's going on, you might get some hope that, oh, okay, I'll send you some information, and they get off the phone. They don't look like a jerk. Often, they can by using this, they can get rid of you quickly because they give you a sense of hope. You end up scripting a 20-minute email that looks great. You send it over to them. They delete it without being read. So here's a response that can help you to get around this. Please make note of this. This one can really help. But they say, just send me your information. Oh, hey, sure, Bob, I definitely will. But you know what? So I know exactly what to send you because I have a bunch of stuff. If I could ask you real quick, are you currently using any automation tools to manage your inventory levels? They answer that question, then ask another one of your pre-qualifying questions, and then the conversation can continue. And if done correctly, it's not crazy for the conversation to continue, and that you never even go back to the topic of sending them information. It happens all the time. Although just send me some information can come up late in a call, and this, like, let's say we're on a cold call, we're having a conversation, and I've asked you some pre-qualifying questions. We've talked a little bit about my company, and then I go for the appointment, and they say, I'm not really ready to, I don't know if I'm ready to put a meeting on the calendar. Why don't you just send me your information? I'll look over it and I'll be back in touch. And so when this happens, this is late in a call. This is it's not so much a blow off. It's just the prospect isn't ready to commit to moving forward to the next step in the process. And a response you can use for this is, sure, I definitely will send over some information. Are there any? And this one's tricky because you don't have as many places to redirect to, because most often you've already asked some questions, talked about pain. It would just kind of be weird just to kind of try to go back and keep the conversation going. Here you just kind of want to try to go for the meeting again. So sure, I definitely will. If I could ask, are there some particular details that you have questions about? I mean, in terms of mentioning me sending information, and maybe they answer that, maybe they don't. And here's the key. But I don't, and it's not written out here perfectly. But what I would typically say here is something like this. But Bob, based on what you said, it sounds like you might have a level of interest, and to be honest with you, it might be quicker just to have a conversation, either over the phone or I can come by on another day, instead of me just unloading a bunch of information on you in your email. I have tons of marketing material I could send your way, but if there's something that you were looking for in terms of having questions about or wanting to learn more about, it's quicker just for us to talk through it. Do you want to just kind of get together on another day? So there you're kind of going for the meeting. You're basically painting a picture of why go through. You're asking me to send you information. Why go through a bunch of information when we can have a conversation and you can tell me your questions and I can tell you the answers instead of you reading a bunch of stuff. It still might not work. With all of these objections, what you're looking at is you're looking at doing this over a number of different instances, and these tactics more often than not work, but you're still going to have instances where the objection ends the conversation. And this objection, non-committal, is not as bad as the blow-off. I mean, you actually had a conversation. You're having trouble getting them to that next stage. You just still maybe identify, what is there a reason why you're not interested in continuing forward? What time frame Is it too? Is it you're not ready right now? Is there a time frame when it makes sense? That's kind of more of a overcome, isolate, than get to the root. Is there a reason? You basically is it a timing thing? You're interested, but it's not the right time. When would be the right time? So that is kind of an isolate and get to the root response. We're still looking at redirects though, so we already use somebody for that. This one comes up all the time because a lot of times you sell something and the prospect already uses something from somebody else, or they have something in place. A great place to redirect on these, and these could be in your pre-qualifying questions, but maybe they aren't. But questions like, "Oh, good. Hey, how long have you been using them? How's it going? What product are they? What product are you using of theirs? What do you like about working with them? Is there anything that you need that they're not able to provide?" Those are great questions to ask to find out how things are going, and great questions to ask in that area. What do you like? What's working well? What's not working so well? Usually, there's always something that's not working so well. So, soften that by asking them what's working well, and then you can always redirect to your qualifying questions. We're not looking at making a change right now. Oh, I understand, and I want you to know that we're not trying to sell anything at this point, and we don't even know if you're a good fit or not. Our goal is simply to open the dialogue between our companies so that if you reach a point where you're ready or looking to make a change, you'll know who we are and what we have to offer, and then you can so that's sort of a diffuser. And then you continue the conversation by saying, "But if I could ask you real quick, are you currently using any automation tools to manage your inventory levels?" So, but if we go back to sort of the diffuser, I've already talked about. I don't even know if you're trying to sell. I don't know if we're not trying to sell you anything. So that's actually the mindset that you should be in, right? Because we've talked about in other training modules, your immediate goal is to establish a conversation. So it's not to sell anything. The fact that they're not looking to make a change right now isn't a valid objection, because you're not trying to sell them anything right now. You're trying to have a conversation. If their objection was, "We're not looking to have a conversation right now," that's a more valid objection. So since their objection isn't valid, we need to tell them why it's not valid. I understand, and I want you to know we're not trying to sell you anything at this point, and I don't even know if you really need what we provide. And then the second paragraph here fits great because this really is your goal. They don't know you, you don't know them, and they're using something else, and nobody's talking to anybody. We want to have establish the lines of communication. You're using something else today. That's great. Someday that's not going to be. You're going to need something else. You're going to need something new. You're going to run out, whatever. And we just want you to know know about us. So you don't necessarily say all these words, but this is your mindset: is that you want to be fresh in their mind, so that when they're ready to purchase, they can think of you. And so one way to get there is you want to have that. You want to have a conversation. You want to schedule a meeting. You want to learn more about them, teach them about you. Then also part of that would be staying in contact with them over a period of time, drip email campaigns. But that really is your goal. Our goal is simply to open the dialogue between our two companies so that if you reach a point where you are ready or looking to make a change, you'll know who we are and what we have to offer. So really helpful stuff there on redirecting. We don't have any budget money to spend right now. Almost the exact same. Well, it is the exact same response. What we just went through, you could say the exact same response, because we're not making any changes, or we already used somebody today, and we don't have any money to spend. It's the exact same response. I don't know if we're the right fit. Our goal is simply to open up the dialogue between our companies, and then you redirect when you're qualifying questions. So we pretty much just gave you ways to respond to the most common objections. That can be, if you just use that as a game plan and tailor it to your situation, voila, you then have a way to handle objections. But so that you can remember those responses, here's a tool that you can use. It's called an objections map. So one column is the common objections, or even uncommon objections if you want to go that far. And then on the right side are your responses. So you could go through what we just went through, list those out, write the responses that are specific to your situation, maybe the questions that you can ask. And there is a great tool that you could have on your wall. You could practice and whatnot. So that objections map is going to help you to improve right out the door with dealing with objections. But when you do face objections, one thing to continue to get better every day is to get in the habit of reflecting back. And so the way I refer to this is reflect back to improve forward. And so it's basically when a call ends, think back on what objections the prospect gave you. Even if you diffused all of them, you can still probably think back and say, well, what did they say to try to get rid of me? And think about how you responded to those, and think about if your responses were effective or not. There might be an objection that you heard that you weren't prepared for, didn't have on your objections map, and then that might be a point where you might need to add that as an objection. There might be an objection that you heard and that you responded to according to your game plan, and you might think, did it work? Maybe you came up with an objection response and it didn't really work, and you might need to tweak it. It's only by reflecting back that you will continue to improve. So that is the objections module. Some key takeaways: you're guaranteed to get objections on just about every cold call. You can immediately improve your results by simply listing out the main objections that you can anticipate and scripting your responses scripting the responses that stand to keep the calls going. Your goal is really to keep conversations going. It's not necessarily to resolve the objection. Not only can this improve your results, but it can also decrease your stress, improve your confidence, improve your mental state. Focus on redirecting ahead of instead of overcoming objections, because the goal is to keep calls going. It's not to change someone's mind. When a call ends, reflect back, so you can improve your ability to handle future calls. That's it. Hope this helps. Good luck. Happy hunting.